Hello, everyone. I'm Ryan Smolar from Placemaking US. Thank you for joining us for this timely discussion. In the United States, we're witnessing a monumental and unthinkable backsliding from democracy and society minded governance toward authoritarian rule. The current regime is unlike any before it, marked by cruelty and the swiftness of its agenda. We're seeing safety net services, science, arts and culture, farming and food, equity programs, public information, and more gutted overnight. Not phased out, but erased. I myself lost a $200,000 5-year USDA grant just last week. Presto, gone. In addition, there's rapid economic destabilization from tariffs and trade wars, rising costs, and slow job growth. And many are asking, how did we get here? And yet we already know some of the answers. Polarization fed by our media ecosystems and the collapse of in-person community have created a kind of meta-psychological warfare, leaving people isolated, disoriented, and searching for scapegoats. At Placemaking US, we believe the solutions lie in people knowing each other and knowing their neighbors. We've seen the best of humanity when people come together face to face. It sparks something ancient and instinctive, our capacities for fraternity, care, and collaboration. We're not going to solve it all today, sorry, nor will we cover every way that public space supports justice, equity, and participation. But we are going to introduce you to a few of our better angels, people using place and participation to plant seeds for a better world. And yes, we want to bring this whole bar mitzvah to your town. Our team is helping cities and regions ignite conversations about how local systems can weave democracy into the delivery of services and spread stewardship and sustainability for spaces, policies, and programs that need a refresh. We've worked with New York City, Oregon Metro, Southern California, and Florida and Appalachia, and dozens more to help catalyze turnarounds in neighborhoods, parks, plazas, and even the streets themselves. But today we begin hearing from voices across the country. Philadelphia, a cradle of American democracy. Detroit, a city rewriting its story through placement. We'll listen to Sam and Abby, who are working with the design cohort to think through democracy across several levels of place dynamics. And Phoebe, who carved out a corner of a park to become the living, tangible embodiment of a vital but often abstract government function, the budget. From Alex, who's mapping disparities between the places we live and the governance structures that invisibly shape them. And from Jack, who's working to stitch together two neighborhoods divided by an imposed boundary, the roadway, using place as a tool to reconnect what was separated. But I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Fatima Elcott, who will be guiding us through today's journey, moderating our speakers, and leading us into the fireside chats, where we'll have a deeper opportunity to connect and build new collaborations and insights together.
Well, first up, without any delay, I'm going to pass it off to our first presenters, which is Sam and Abby. Go for it. You guys have the floor.
Sweet. Hi, everyone. My name's Sam Yanucci, and Abby, Jamie, and I are going to be presenting on our initiative called Designing for Democracy, which is a participatory design series and a national toolkit in the making. So, like I said, I'm Sam Yanucci, trained as an urban planner and community engagement specialist, and I'm the managing director of our small Philly-based firm called Ombuds.
And I'm Abby Jamiel, and I'm trained as an urban planner and community engagement specialist.
So Designing for Democracy is something that has been stewing in my mind for a while, particularly inspired by my move back to the suburbs of Northeast Ohio, from having been in European cities such as Amsterdam and Stockholm. And I was really quite shocked. Like, it was a culture shock to be in a place that was so disconnected, where there was no public transit, a lack of public spaces, people weren't gathering. And I really got to thinking, if I could create anything in the world that could dismantle democracy, what would that be? And it would be the suburbs, because democracy at its core requires people to be together and to, it's a collective effort. And so if I could design something to dismantle that, it would be to separate people and keep them in their own little worlds, away from people with different life experiences. So during this unprecedented political era, I'm not actually sure if it was unprecedented, but I wanted to inspire hope and just to remind people that democracy isn't just a political system where we either win or we lose every 4 years. It's something that we practice daily, and we have the opportunity to nurture it every time we walk out of our doors, every time we interact with someone on the streets, anytime we're in public space. We really have the opportunity to come together and to listen to people's stories and create the world that we wish to see. So Designing for Democracy explores how public space shapes democracy. It began as a local event series and now is growing into a replicable national program. Sorry, I have a very democratic train outside of my window. So if you have any trouble hearing me, just tell me. Yeah, it's growing into a replicable national program and a toolkit for civic design. The fact of the matter is, democracy is being challenged across the US, and the public realm is our civic frontline. So yeah, this seeks to remind us that public spaces are one of the last commons and a critical stage for civic life, whether it's demonstration or just coming together to advocate for changes that we want to see. And it's a very timely effort too, as the US approaches its 250th anniversary, of which Philly is going to have massive celebrations. We believe, it's time to rethink how democracy lives in our neighborhoods. So let's turn it over to Abby so she could tell us about where we're going and what we've done.
Thanks, Sam. So we wanted to both conduct research on these ideas and explore them in community with other people. And this created the idea of hosting an event series on how to execute both of these aims. And we have our third event coming up this month. And I'll dig deeper into the details of these events in a moment, but there are some high-level takeaways here on this slide. You can go to the next slide, Sam. Thank you. And so after the first events, we realized that we were unintentionally speaking about democracy from really only one perspective, and that of the Western American idea of what the word democracy means, the traditions of civic action associated with that term, and the expectations that we hold for those in power. And we know that America is growing more culturally diverse. In our own city of Philadelphia, the Pew Charitable Trust noted that almost 16% of the city's population is foreign born. And that is both above the national average and the highest percent that the city has been in 80 years. And different cultures have different definitions of democracy, perceptions of civic duties and expectations of those in leadership positions. And we want to capture all of these nuances, seeing where there are overlaps and differences with the Western perspective. And our goal is to incorporate these different global perspectives in an event series that we're hoping to host during Philadelphia's Design Week. Thank you. And the events are meant to build on each other, but not require attendance at a previous event in order to participate. It moves from reflection to ideation to prototyping, and the audience is all of those interested in the topic, not just professionals from policy, design, or planning. Okay, and I'll give y'all a second to take in this slide with a lot of words on it. But essentially, event number one is where professionals share how they've incorporated this idea of designing for democracy into their work. So for example, we heard from an advocate who successfully built a coalition to stop the creation of an arena in Philly's Chinatown. In event two, people were given a handbook with personal reflection questions like, how do you define democracy? What does a democratic place feel like? What tangible things does it include? Like a train outside of your window. And there were moments of self-reflection and then some small group discussions. And then part three, we are looking at turning these ideas actually into reality. When we came up with this graphic, we were like, oh, 3's enough, but now we have 4 events. So that's why it looks like that. But part 3 is workshopping ideas at the macro level. So how do we build a neighborhood that is crafted out of the principles of democracy? Literally, where do the schools go? Where do the roads go? Where are the homes? What are the relationships to each other? What are the sizes? And then part number 4, we really zoom down into a micro level. And we ask our groups to design a physical public space, be it an alleyway, a park, a plaza, a bus station, using these principles of designing for democracy. And then again, we run these events with people from different cultures, which is what you see in the pink band noted cultural lenses. So these are some photos from our first event. for the next one. And photos from our second with some snippets of the responses that we got from our workbooks. And I'll put you back to Sam, who can explain more about how these events fit into our full process.
Yeah, so basically we're running these events and everyone is coming up with brilliant ideas about how to design a public space for democracy. And we're getting a lot of data that we're like, what do we do with this data? And then Ryan and I have a conversation at a very timely moment. And he was like, hey, I heard about your Designing for Democracy events. Would you be willing to like share that and we could practice it, run these events in different cities throughout the nation? And we're like, heck yes. So now we're going to formalize the handbook and in a way that could generate, a data within a consistent structure to feed into a toolkit. And then the toolkit could be used by architects, planners, any type of built environment practitioners, but also just community advocates and people who want to learn to just think in the way of designing for democracy. So the toolkit will feature, while the facilitator handbook includes like adaptable formats and all of the prompts that we're using and the facilitation strategies to walk through the 4 primary events. The toolkit will be very visual. We'll have design concepts, policy initiatives, and good case studies for how spaces can be designed for democracy. So that's where we are now. And we just hope that it reminds us, everyone, that, democracy is not a box that we check every 4 years. It really is an everyday spatial and cultural practice. And one of my favorite things was when we wrapped up event 2, we asked everybody before they left, like, think about one small way you could really advocate and nurture democracy in your everyday life. It doesn't have to be something insane. And so many people that night said, I'm going to walk around with no headphones in. And that kept coming up. And that's really stuck with me it just really speaks to they came to that on their own. Like we're asking them to reflect on the built environment and then them walking around with or without headphones as a way of creating connections in their communities. Yeah, that really stood out to us. So we're hoping to get really cool other ideas like that. And yes, design is not neutral. We believe it must be spatially supported to thrive. And when environments are designed to reinforce individualism, we lose the infrastructure of belonging and mutual responsibility that democracy requires. So the built environment really does play a critical role in shaping democratic behavior, and it has a direct influence on the strength of our civic body.
So thank you so much. Here's our contact info if you'd like to just connect generally, if you want to hear more about the project, if you are offering to be a pilot city, or perhaps assist with funding the development of the handbook and the toolkit. We would love to talk.
Great, yeah.
So thank you, everyone.
Dogs for Democracy.
We're hearing more about how Alex is mapping plays at next levels. We transition over to the screen. Let's hear over from Alex. And then Abby and Sam, maybe stop sharing. Yep. Perfect.
Oops. Oh, my slides are not at the beginning. There we go. Hey, hello from Detroit. We have our mayoral primary election tomorrow. So this is a great time to be talking about this. Our current mayor has served 3 terms and decided not to run again. So it's going to be a big shift because this will be the technically the first mayor post bankruptcy that will be electing. And so I'm going to talk about what our voting systems look like. I'm going to talk a lot about border lines and where those lines come into play for democracy. As Ryan alluded to, some of the invisible forces that change and control and either connect people, or we'll see if they disconnect people. I do a whole bunch of different stuff in Detroit. The number one being Detroitography. So check it out, detroitography.com. But I'm in workforce development. I teach public health in the city and intro to GIS at Wayne State University in Detroit. We run a community open data portal called Detroit Data, where we pull together 7 different open data portals, as well as be a host for nonprofits and community groups so they can contribute to the data narrative of the city. And then I do a number of kind of community skill building and training opportunities. One being Map Time, where we bounce around the city. Map Time was an international effort that kind of ran out of steam, but we're still doing it in Detroit. And then I focus on research justice and data mapping for community leaders, so they can map their own communities, which that's the overall goal all the time. And so my journey in this, I'm actually trained as an anthropologist. I love maps and data. I don't know why, but I do. Everyone always asks me why. But my journey for specifically kind of thinking about democracy and mapping and where it all smushes together, is I decided, I'm going to map turnout in the midterm election 2022. And you can see there's some pretty obvious hot spots on the map here, and it really ends up being these are the high income, super organized neighborhoods of Detroit. Also, I guess, super wealthy. I just want to repeat that. These are the folks who are working downtown, who are leading organizations. These are the places that they live. And they have some of the longest standing community associations, organizations. They're organized and connected. I guess, that's a strong marker for place and participation in democracy. Not that all these other places don't have similar identities, but these have definitely been around for a very long time. But one of the first things that I came across when I was trying to do this mapping exercise was our voting precincts were not, they weren't necessarily standardized. I know the census tried to lead some effort, I want to say it was the 90s or maybe the early 2000s, to standardize voting precincts. And I think there was like 21 states that participated. But what I found was that may be true for Michigan, but Detroit was kind of doing its own thing. And in the 2022 election, they went from 500 voting precincts to 450. But they didn't tell anyone. They didn't share the data anywhere. And we right now went through a large redistricting process for our city council. So same with other areas and districts. It was 10 years since Detroit implemented city council district voting. So 10 years we had to check, what did population look like? Do we need to shift these zones so they're more representative? And so all of a sudden we had some of these voting precincts that were no longer within the city council district that they had originally been inside of. And you can see these where all these little red lines are where voting precincts got merged together from the previous time period. So again, this Detroit has a lot of regular stories where people try to go vote on election day, and all of a sudden they find out they need to go to some other polling place, or they're not in the same precinct that they used to be in, because this level of information just isn't readily available to folks, and was difficult for me as a data person as well. And that was kind of, we set up the city in city council districts in 2013. And we always had this, I called it a data conundrum, because people always wanted to know, people being politicians and folks who were moving policy forward, doing things on behalf of democracy. They said, well, I want to know the data for my council district. And we go, that's great. But voting precincts and census geographies do not align at all. They should align at the very smallest scale of the block, as defined by the census. because that's what gets used in redistricting. But that's once every 10 years. And we actually do our redistricting on an off year. So, we're having our mayoral election right now. There's no other major election happening. And on every in-between year, we try to use, the American Community Survey and census tract level information because that's more reliable. And we just can't smush those into council districts or even zip codes because zip codes aren't a census geography either. I won't go on about zip codes, but they're postal routes. That's what. They're not polygons. And so during this redistricting process, I think my organization, we worked with about 4 different community groups. Some were community development organizations, others were just coalitions of community groups. And they were trying to put their own redistricting plans forward and say, look, we want to keep our coalition of folks in the same city council district because we want to vote together. We want to, inform democracy as a kind of a block. And the city didn't necessarily care about that. They cared about the most expedient process. So then you ended up with some of these folks where you can see the redistricting line just cut their neighborhood in half. So instead of being able to vote with their neighbors or kind of build those democratic ties, they weren't able to do that. And so this was the resulting, I'm trying to remember the number. I think it was like, I'm going to say the wrong number. It was a handful of neighborhoods across the city that all of a sudden saw, they were either split in half or they got shifted into a new council district, and they kind of lost that coalition building that they'd been working on for a very, very long time in the city. The process of changing those voting precincts, I really tried to dig in and ask those questions. I still don't have an answer because technically we have an election commission that is supposed to review and approve any merges of voting precincts or separations or whatever. And there's no record. I think they've met once in the last year or twice or something like that. And so it becomes that body is relatively invisible. They're supposed to make the decisions, but they don't. And so it ends up that the city clerk is just doing whatever works best for them. And that doesn't always foster democracy. And the kind of add-on to looking at how messy voting precincts can be, and how you might lose your opportunity to vote with your neighbors, is that this is like a fireworks map. I don't know what to call it, but the lines draw from your voting precinct to your polling place. So some of these polling places are like, why in the world are these people voting together? There's a total breakdown of place-based democracy when that was the whole goal of, we didn't have city council districts for a long time, and they were only re-implemented in 2013. There's now 400 voting precincts. So again, we went from 500 to 450, now 450 to 400. And you have some of these polling places where, so in particular, you have a whole bunch of different folks going to Sampson Academy, but they're coming from, these are more than 3 miles away. And they have to pass by, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, depending on the route, maybe seven different polling places before they arrive at where they're going to vote. And I don't know why they couldn't just go to, I don't again, I know it's a big lift for a city the size of Detroit. I would love to hear more if folks have information, experience from other cities on voting precincts and polling places and I have also, had discussions with the city's data team internally, off the record, and they've provided the training and the resources for the clerk's office to do this in a better way, a more efficient way. Um, but it seems to be just too much. So as a result, my team put together a tool with that votedetroit.org. Um, I'll look for all the international hits on the website, but if you know a Detroiter, send it to them. But there was no easy way for you just to put in your address and know what your voting precinct was and where your polling place was. And then also if your city council district changed, because we just redistricted. Um, yeah, so that was my very data and map heavy. I really feel like, there should be, it isn't hard to figure out how to make kind of place and democracy go hand in hand. And I really think it should. You want to be voting with your neighbors. You want to build that kind of civic trust and social tie with the folks that you live near.
Alex, thank you so much. That was super powerful. I think seeing the maps, I mean, I am a map geek, but I think seeing them visually shows and tells such a story. Next up, we have Jack all the way from Minneapolis. So we're going over there to hear more about his work with 36th Street and bringing together two different streets with people power. Bringing it over to you. Perfect. Take it away, Jack.
Well, hi everyone. This is so exciting to be part of, and really glad I'm coming on the heels of the previous two speakers because it feels like a transition to the hyper local now. So after a career of about 42 years in the public art field, I finally retired in 2020 amidst the pandemic and the murder of George Floyd, not far from where I live. So there was a lot of traumatizing in the neighborhoods, and mine included, and a lot of people feeling the need to reconnect and do things to make change for the better on their own, you know. And 36 ART evolved. I'm going to tell the story of the origin story of 36 ART. And it gave me really an opportunity during my retirement to do something special with my skills. So let's see if I can get the next slide. Okay, how about this? There we go. So 36th Avenue, about 6 blocks from where I live, runs north and south through South Minneapolis. And right over 36th Avenue is a railroad bridge that half of it got converted to a bicycle corridor called the Midtown Greenway. As you look at this map, you'll see there's a park on the right in the foreground, and we can't see it off screen to the left, but there's a new nonprofit charter high school called Hiawatha Academies. And in 2020, Hiawatha Academies became my new polling place. And so I went to vote at the school, this new building. It was walking down the hallway, and there's a bulletin board. And lo and behold, a flyer on the bulletin board caught my attention. It said, "Meeting of the Public Art Club this Wednesday." And my mouth just dropped because I've been involved in the public art field for a long time. And I didn't know of any high school with a public art club or program, and let alone one in my own neighborhood. So that got me super excited, and I was determined to follow up at some point with them. About a year later, I got a call from somebody who lives just north of this bridge, and they said, "Jack, we need your help. This bridge is in terrible shape. Here's what the bridge looks like, or looked like. Unsafe, falling apart, aging, graffiti covered, dark, foreboding. And this happens to be the borderline between the Seward neighborhood to the north and Longfellow neighborhood to the south. And I was asked, what do you think we could do about it? My first thought was, oh, it would be great to get some artists involved, and why not involve the public art club at the high school right next door? So they loved that idea, and we started looking for artists who work with young people to create murals. And that work began in 2023 after we were able to raise some money both from our neighborhood organizations, city, community council organizations, as well as an organization on Lake Street, which is just 2 blocks south. And we found an artist named Peyton who has a group called Spray Finger. And they offered to come in and do some workshops with the students. And later on, we also connected with some folks at the University of Minnesota, because one of the big issues here wasn't just the transformation of the bridge into something more beautiful. It was, how can we help calm the traffic on this street, because cars are speeding through and the city doesn't seem to care or want to do anything about it. So we hooked up with the Minnesota Design Center at the university, and they came into the classroom also to talk with kids about what are the traffic issues and what are their routes to school and where are their social spaces in the neighborhood. So it was really an immersive experience with the youth at the school, which is 90% Latinx students in pretty much an all-white neighborhood. So it also presented an interesting opportunity to bridge cultures while we were at it. So after some workshops with the students, this group that Peyton set up called Spray Finger put the kids to work starting to add murals to the walls on either side of the street. After the students had done research about both the Seward neighborhood and the Longfellow neighborhood, they later named the mural River Memory. And so phase one of this project was these 80-foot walls along the sidewalks, and you can see the transformation that's already beginning. And it was really interesting working with high school students at this time, having been traumatized through the isolation of COVID. And what is it like going back to school when you're a high schooler after that? And it was really interesting to see, once they got stencils and spray cans in their hands, how much they came to life, and what an amazing, empowering thing that was. I'm looking forward to talking more about the empowerment of public art and community-based public art as we think about place and democracy. And of course, the design of the bridge is one thing, but the lack of maintenance, when you think about how design can promote or hinder civic participation, it was really the state of the bridge that warranted all of this effort and fundraising, and then months of working on the bridge. And as it took shape, it was really fascinating. People could walk by and interact with the students. One of the students ended up later getting a full scholarship to Yale as a result of her involvement in this. So the school got very excited, whereas this was not a priority for them, as you can imagine. And then it was time to focus on the rest of the bridge. And the following year, we found, through a call for artists, a group to do a paint-a-thon, because we knew the only way we could get the rest of the bridge transformed was to literally close the street down. And because it's a bus route and a busy street, that could only happen over one weekend. So here's the work going on over one weekend with a celebration that occurred at the end. And a community celebration with hundreds of people coming to watch the mural get finished and the bridge completed. And it was just an incredible feel-good opportunity. And it gave our group a lot of power to feel like we could tackle the rest of this corridor. And so there's been other initiatives we've been doing with 36 ART. But I'll show you a couple of details of the underside of the finished bridge just to whet your appetite here. And of course, with community engaged public art, we're talking about civic pride. And what does that translate into? Pride in place. and a place you actually want to go and hang out rather than a place you want to avoid, or in case of, vehicles want to speed through. Now they want to slow down and check it out. And we were eventually able to petition the city public works to add lighting under the bridge, which also made a big difference in terms of perception of safety. And then we decided to do something on top of the bridge with the chain link fence that's up there. And we started a yarn bombing project that's been up for almost a year, planning to refresh it this year. And it's part of a Greenway Glow Festival, happens every year. And of course, slowing down for art was part of our strategy. We did a lot of research into where is public art being effective in terms of traffic calming. And so you can see how this evolved on the top of the bridge, which also became a huge hit, even in the winter. And so since the transformation, you can see the before and after, it's pretty clear. We've been artifying empty storefronts. We've planted dozens of trees. We've worked with the university to research traffic calming strategies, and we're hopefully work with the school some more on safe routes to school strategies that they can get funding for. We've got a website and a newsletter. One of the neighbors has started an annual lemonade stand for a fundraiser. We've been collecting community input on some of the other ideas. And next week, we're organizing a community potluck meal under the bridge. So we're closing off the street for a block party. And like tomorrow night, I don't know if any of you have National Night Out, where you get together with the folks on your block and have a meal, a potluck meal to meet with your neighbors. This will be like the United Nations of block club parties happening on August 14th. I'm super excited about it. And I'll leave it at that. Look forward to talking to you more.
I am just mind blown. My God, and my heart is swelling. Those were beautiful. The murals were incredible. Everything that you tied in together is absolutely everything. I mean, the chat is we're full of love bombing you. I mean, that was beautiful. That was one of the most incredible murals I've ever seen. I'm geeked. That was beautiful. Phoebe, please take us away and finish us off with your presentation. That was great. We're back to Philly.
Cool. Happy to and continue this conversation. It's been so amazing to hear everyone's presentations. Really incredible. So my name is Phoebe. I'm with the People's Budget Office. We are a project out of Philadelphia. We are part of the Mural Arts Program, which I'm sure many folks on this call are familiar with. And then we are also funded by the William Penn Foundation. So I use pronouns she, they. I'm the director and facilitating artist of this project. I've been with the project since its inception, basically since around 2021. And something about the People's Budget is that we focus on these three core attributes: learn, imagine, and advocate. And one of the things is that we're thinking about the budget as more than just a set of numbers. Of course, that is true, but it's a narrative. It's how we're thinking about the future of our city. It's also showing us what we imagine, what we value. Oftentimes when we give our Budget 101 presentation, we say the budget is a plan with a price tag. It's the forecast of the future of our city. It's a law and it's a moral document. And we usually ask people, why is it a moral document? And I'm sure folks are familiar with the MLK quote. But for folks to basically reflect why we value certain things over other things, what our elected officials value, and especially if we're looking at this, at a national scale right now, we're, seeing this firsthand of, what is being valued over what is not. Militarization over healthcare and education. And so this project, while it is a local project based in Philadelphia, it's something that has kind of national resonance. So as I mentioned, we look at kind of three different parts of the budget, or through three different lenses, which is learn, advocate, and imagine. And so when we think about learn, we're thinking about education. So one of the first things that folks, tell us is that they know nothing about the budget. They have no necessarily interest in the budget. And so we're trying to change that. We're trying to get more people civically involved in the city in general, but also in the budgeting process. Because if they get involved in the budgeting process, they can actually have a say in what funding goes into their neighborhoods. They can have a say in the after-school programs. the funding that goes to the libraries, to the rec centers, to the, fixing the pothole on their street. And so when we talk about Learn, we usually focus on a couple of different methods. And so we use budget 101s, budget 201s, which are more focused on kind of specific issues. We have a People's Budget website where we host a bunch of different resources on, what's going on in the city budget. We run a budget survey, and this year we gathered over 600 responses to that. We have brochures that we hand out to folks that we drop off through our various kind of residential workshops as well as workshops online. And then we also have an Instagram where we share out information. And these are just some images from our Budget 101 workshops. So at our Budget 101 workshops, we give a kind of basic presentation as to how the budget works and then also how people can get involved in the budgeting process. And we partner with a lot of different community-based organizations so that we can do these across Philadelphia. And over the last few months, we've done over 10 of these in all different parts of the city with a bunch of different community-based organizations. And at the end of the day, we are also an art project. And so while we were talking about the budget, we also want people to be creatively engaged. And so one of the things we've done is bring in a screen printer we collaborated on creating these folders that say, imagine a fully funded city. And so something that people can do while they come to our Budget 101s is that they can screen print their own folder, and then they can also fill that with ideas of what that imagined city looks like, or what would it look like if we could imagine a fully funded city. Part of what we do too is that we do collages and things like that. So we're actually gathering data in a lot of different forms of, what people want their city to look like. And this is just a kind of snapshot of some of the things that are on our Instagram. Definitely follow us. It's People's Budget for Philly with the number 4. But this has also just become a platform for being able to share educational information about the budget as well. So we know that, it's not just a place to show all of the work that we're doing, but it's actually a place to engage people and for them to learn about how the city budget works. So when we talk about Imagine, we're thinking really about artist residencies. We have the People's Budget office at Love Park, which was mentioned earlier. We have a budget study group that's going to be launching this fall. And then we're also going to be launching a new program where we're doing illustrations of what a people's budget looks like. So in terms of our artist residency, we run a program at Love Park where we bring in between 3 to 5 artists in residence each year. And Love Park, for those of you who haven't been to Philly, is a park that's in the center of the city. It's directly next to City Hall. And it has all different types of folks who are like constantly coming through the space. And so about 3 years ago, we were able to get a shipping container there where we were able to create engagements around the city budget. And so each of our artists in residence focuses on a topic within the city budget, and then they create programming as well as kind of artistic outputs of how they interpret the budget. So one here was someone focused on the library and people who have organized around keeping the libraries open. We had someone, actually Lily, if you all know her, who was focused around creating some recycled pieces of artwork and talking about trash and dumping in the city. One of our folks, Ingrid Raphael, who was one of our artists in residence before, was focused around SEPTA, which is our public transportation, and really sparking conversations around mapping SEPTA. And then in addition to our artistic work with our artists in residence, we've also been kind of delving into more performance and experimental forms of engaging the city budget and directly engaging at City Hall as well. And so this is an example of our People's Budget Roundtable, which happened last year at City Hall in the caucus room, where we had people speaking to how the city budget works and speaking with elected officials about what was important to them in the city budget. And something that we want to stress is that this is not just public testimony, which is already a form that's given to us by the city, but we're actually creating new forms of how we engage with our elected officials. These are just some snapshots of the People's Budget office at Love Park. So you can see it's in the shipping container. We've outfitted the space with a bunch of posters. The picture on the right also has this bar graph. That's actually showing a bar graph of the city funding for our general fund. So that's just like one slice of the budget. And there's some information under that about how the revenue works within the city budget. And then next to that are some prints by some artists that we're working with. So we're always trying to kind of mix statistical information with artistic interpretations. And this is another example of that, is this was a mural on the back wall of the container last year, and that has been kind of rotating space for being able to create art about the city budget. And so we, show budget basics on one side. We're showing what people want to see in the budget, so their representation, but then we're actually overlaying that with budget documents themselves. And these are just some more photos from some of our engagements at Love Park. One of our artists in residence this year created an amazing magazine called Fund the People, and it was looking at the police budget, but specifically the money that goes to police uniforms, and reimagining what that could look like for community safety uniforms. And then so just some images of the inside. This is our brochure at the bottom that says Imagine, Learn, Advocate. It's a kind of basic 101 of how the budget works. And it's something that we're really easily able to distribute to a bunch of people. So if they can't come to one of our 101s, maybe they come across the brochure. And then in terms of advocacy, because we are part of a nonprofit that is also associated with the city, we can't necessarily campaign on our own for, what we want to see in the city budget, but we think of ourselves more as a platform for people to be able to do that. And then we also work in partnership with grassroots groups who are doing really amazing campaigns around this type of work. So we've worked with the Alliance for a Just Philadelphia, which is running incredible campaigns around the city budget and really creating a just Philadelphia for everyone. We also have partnerships with city council, so we can make sure that folks are listening to all the kind of information that we're gathering. We've created people's budget reports. We support people's participation in public hearings so that they know how to show up for those public hearings so that they can practice their testimony. And then we also have been creating advocacy posters over the years, which we paste all over the city. So this is just an example of some of the survey results we gathered from this year. We surveyed over 600 Philadelphians, and this is the first year that we launched the survey. So I imagine next year we'll be able to do a kind of even more robust survey process. And then this is an example of some of the posters that we pasted around the city. And, we're also just trying to bring this information to people's consciousness who, again, might not necessarily know it, but they walk by and they see, oh, a fully funded staffed library. That's something that I want to see in my city. And then that might prompt them to be engaged in a different way than they would have been before. All right, I know that was really fast, but I also realize we're getting to time. So yeah, thank you everyone for listening.
Phoebe, that was incredible. And I feel like such a tangible way to end this. I think you all have heard from big to small, hyper-local, to how we can continue this conversation in many different places. This is incredible work. One of the biggest things that we wanted to have with this space is we wanted to hear this and get inspired, which I'm sure all of us are really feeling, and get to see some really cool projects and meet cool people. So we want to self-organize into some breakout rooms. So we're each going to have a breakout room for each of the speakers that you've heard from today. So you can dive deeper into one of these topics. We really want this to be as action focused as possible. So please make sure as you're in these spaces, how can we reimagine this? How can we walk away from this virtual space today with something? Whatever that something is up to you all, but we are going to open them up. Each of the rooms should have the name of the panelists. You can self-select, it's democracy. So choose who you want to speak with and dive in. And yes, if you have to jump off, no worries. We will follow up with some homework for you all to continue the conversation and continue the movement. We have a lot of work to do, folks. So see you in the breakout rooms, and we will come back as a group afterwards and see what we got going on.
All right, so to close us out, we want to hear about what happened in each of the little campfire discussions. Fatima, you want to pick someone to kick us off?
Yeah, sure. I was just in Jack's, so I think we had a really nice conversation if you want to go for it.
Yeah, I feel lucky. I had a one-on-one with Susan Holt from Salisbury, Maryland, and she has a similar challenge of this, US 50 or 51 freeway. Is it 50 or 51, Susan?
50, US 50.
Yeah, running through her town. And what could be done with it? And she just got a flat out no when she tried reaching out to the, State Arts Council after, DOTs always say no first. That's their mantra. But we talked about ways that you can build coalitions of people who also feel strongly about making a change for the better, and how art can play a role of bringing people together, empowering them to make change for the better, and usually that helps build the kind of support needed to get to the yes. In other words, don't take no. The first, second, third, fourth, fifth, don't take it. Just figure out another strategy to get to a yes. That's the first rule right there. Because if you're willing to take the first no and then go up, you won't have any sense of what you could have accomplished if you bring people together, have a shared vision and common goal. And that's really what happened on 36th Avenue and this group 36 ART. And now we feel so emboldened. We're going on to plant trees and host a gigantic community meal. And, we're just starting to build up steam. But it started with that challenge, right? Of nobody's ever tried to do anything with this. Do you think we can? And of course, there were tons of challenges to get to the yes and the funding. And it took 2 years, I'll be honest with you, those 280-foot walls, it took a while to get to the full funding and a group working with students and all of that. But once it got rolling and the students were working on the walls and people could interact with the students and see what it was doing just at that level, we
Yeah.
knew we were building more people who wanted to help us than people who
Yeah.
didn't care,
Yeah.
or worse, were against us. Nobody was against this project, really. It was just dealing with the bureaucracy. And I like to think of bureaucracy as an art form too. It's like found object sculpture.
I love
All of the resources are around you in the city. The materials, the people,
Yeah.
right? The
Yeah,
funding,
and we
it's
have
all there.
2 universities here and high schools that have the what do you call it? The service learning requirements as well. And so the resources are here. It's just getting everybody to do it. So all right, well, I'm gonna resuscitate that project and we'll see where it goes.
Yay! That was
All
a
right.
tangible win. That was awesome. That was incredible information. Phoebe, you're next on my screen.
Cool. Yeah, it was a really great conversation. I would say like some really great questions. Definitely talking a little bit about how we engage folks with different politics in this work, which is something I'm continuing to think about, but also what it means to kind of hold a political view and stick to one that is inclusive and welcoming. And then also thinking about training ourselves to be proactive, especially as it comes to something like the city budget, almost like bringing people together as a form of, rehearsal, as we're working together for what we want to be able to build with one another. Thinking about the funding structures of the project itself and like how do we actually pay artists to participate in this kind of work? How do we pay ourselves to be able to implement this? And I think that's, going to continue to be difficult with where, federal money is going and in general, just kind of our economic crises that is looming in the forecast. But, I think there's also, April, I didn't mention this, but like some solidarity networks and things like that that we could also be thinking about. And also building coalitions as a way to thinking about that you don't have to do all the work yourselves, but you could be doing it in coalition with other folks, which brings in also other funding streams. Yeah, so I think that was, it was really great. It was really great to meet everyone.
That's incredible. Question before I move on to the next one. How do you combat all the different types of politics as you guys move that in? Did you guys get into that a little bit or have some suggestions?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things is that we are already like a pretty liberal city. And so we're starting from a place of folks who are usually engaging in our project are coming from a maybe more shared politics. They might not necessarily be as like radical or progressive as kind of where we're coming from personally. But I think, our Budget 101s, they're not apolitical by any means, but I think they really tell the story in a way that is illuminating, how we got to where we are and using that kind of facts and history to show people, how they can, engage in this work and advocate. But ultimately, we're giving people a platform. How they use that platform is up to them. But we hope to be able to kind of build together towards folks understanding what it looks like to build a just Philadelphia.
Oh, I love that. That's really good. Sam and Abby.
Yeah, in asking our breakout room participants to reflect on what is democracy and what kind of space can you imagine like if it were designed for democracy? A few really cool things came up. So like one was talking about Phoebe's or People's Budget Office. and the concept of having this like, movable third space that you're actually bringing a particular topic to people to engage in that topic they wouldn't have otherwise. So yeah, amazing work, Phoebe, of course. And then the circular space that's tiered where you can kind of see everybody. Quote that comes up like quite often, like if we think of the traditional amphitheaters and just how important that design is for, citing or for initiating dialogue and demonstration and protesting. And then another, like a really interesting point that came up is the youth curfew. So we learned that DC has recently initiated a 18 and under after 9 p.m. curfew. So it really like brings the question to light of who has access to public space and when, and like what types of controls are we imposing to like control who can access public space. And yeah, I mean, also 9 p.m. does seem incredibly early in the summer for someone who's 17, 16, 18. I don't know why I said the numbers in that order, but you feel me? But yeah, so it was a great discussion and gives us so much more to think about too as we develop this out and learn which questions to ask in the next events. And it was awesome.
Oh, I love that. I did not know about that curfew. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah, 9.
That's really crazy. Okay, so I've learned about that. Cheryl, do you want to share about the breakout room that we had with Alex?
Sure. We were just kind of talking about different stuff. We weren't necessarily focused on like what we could do, but we were really focused in on how to align what like the city's neighborhood or district was with the people's I identification of what their neighborhood was, right? And making sure that that fit. And so we talked about some different strategies of like what you can do to like go into a neighborhood and ask that, right? Like go in and engage that community and they can tell you what's in their neighborhood, what's not in their neighborhood, and really, start mapping out the assets and sort of them claiming like what's theirs and what can they own and be a part of. And sort of like Jack's presentation, right? Like this is ours now. Like this is our bridge and we're going to make it beautiful and make it safe and make it loved. And so doing that same thing within neighborhoods, so that way not only do people get really aware of where their neighborhood is, but they start getting to know everybody and start championing things for their neighborhood and getting involved.
Yeah, that was a great synopsis. And I'll just add Beth's map. I'm very curious. Hopefully she'll follow up
Mhm.
and share that with the group. She did a map mapping out environmental justice corridors with what it is the census tracts, I think. And we
Yes.
found that they were completely not culturally competent with how the neighborhood was actually. So it's just, I think maps are such a tangible way for us to see what's not working and see where we can have that power back. But that's incredible. I know that, this small group, thank you for staying past over the time. I thought we got into some pretty incredible conversations. We'll also be following up with everybody who registered. But for those of you who are here, we have this little spreadsheet. Feel free. It's based off of an offers and needs market if you've ever worked with that framework before. But just a way for us to continue the conversation and self-organize and connect. I'm sure we're all, obviously, especially this group, still here because we're very passionate about this and want to talk and want to connect and keep this stuff going. So we're trying to figure out what are ways to make it easier to find each other and things that maybe we're strong at or maybe things that we're weak at and how we can kind of complement each other and keep that going. But I'll pass it off to Ryan for the last thoughts. But I'm so grateful to have had this space with you all. I feel like this was definitely a much needed conversation for me personally. I hope for you as well.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for this enlightening session. I just want to highlight that the next gathering we have is coming up in just a few weeks, and it's a Women in Place event. Lots of really cool examples from the global South as well as from Australia, where they've made huge investments in participation of women in public spaces. We'd love to hear what hot topics you want to be talking about, contributing to. Obviously, housing and full neighborhoods around new housing are a big topic. We've heard a lot lately about parenting and placemaking, about the social isolation parents feel and the need to participate in better structures. which has been interesting because usually we hear about kid placemaking or seniors, but the parents are really raising their hands and asking for help. We want to do some art workshops coming up, some micromobility and rural placemaking, but whatever topics are most interesting to you, maybe even Matt, who's here, we're curious about some red state placemaking, which always seems to come up with its own issues. And then, yeah, we'd love to continue this conversation. We heard from planners and artists and neighborhood activists who are bringing democracy to their neighborhoods and cities. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. As said earlier, the United Nations has identified public space in their new urban agenda as a critical function of the societies that we hope to build. And we need to do a lot of work in this space. And so we're excited to keep this energy up and bring the roadshow to you. So with that, we'll see you all soon. We'll be getting out the recording and hopefully doing a lot more connecting around this topic. And thanks so much to everyone for participating.